Hey guys, after seeing so many inaccuracies and so much misinformation going around, I wanted to clarify what's really going on with the latest NAR settlement. I keep hearing and seeing buyer's agents can't get paid commission anymore, or the days of a standard 6% commission are gone. If you weren't aware of where this lawsuit comes from, it actually stems from a conspiracy that realtors and the NAR are trying to set or inflate commission higher than services warrant based on sellers paying a higher commission covering both the cooperating broker, which is a buyer's broker, and the listing broker's commission, and buyers not paying their agent directly out of pocket. But it's arguable who's really paying all of the commission here, because it does come from the seller's proceeds, but the money ultimately is coming from the buyer, and the price of the house factors in paying commission. So just because it's not coming out of the buyer's pocket directly, it's not exactly coming straight out of the seller's pocket either. So here's a little real estate history for you. Real estate agents used to specifically only work for sellers. Sellers would pay their agents a fee, and the network of real estate agents collectively started to agree that if another agent was able to bring a buyer, the listing agent would split their commission with that agent, which is technically how it still works today to an extent. But the agents that brought a buyer to the listing agent were technically a sub-agent to the listing agent, as they were subcontracted to sell that home. So this meant that those agents legally represented and owed a fiduciary responsibility to the seller. So the agent showing you properties had a legal obligation to represent the seller's best interest. This wasn't good and obviously led to much confusion and many problems for buyers. Thus, buyer's agency and representation was established, but not until the early 1990s. Now buyers have representation that is looking out for their best interests and not the seller's. Having your own representation as a buyer is and was very important. But back to the settlement. First of all, the media is suggesting there's some sort of set or standard commission set by the NAR or realtors. There is no set or standard commission, and the NAR doesn't have a standard commission either. Commission is and has been negotiable. Realtors and brokers can charge or discount however they want to. The NAR rule that has been the subject of litigation doesn't set a standard commission either. The rule is just that the NAR requires listing brokers to communicate an offer of compensation for buyers' brokers, but that compensation could be any amount, even zero. The rule just explains this as necessary because cooperating brokers, which are buyers' brokers, have a right to know what their compensation will be prior to commencing their efforts to sell. So what is the intent of this lawsuit really? They say this is all done in an effort to lower the commissions being paid out by making buyer and seller pay their own representation separately. But a study by Redfin found that properties listed offering less than the market rate of commissions sat on the market longer and got less overall traffic. This is why when I take a listing, I explain that the amount I'm offering to a buyer's agent is considered a marketing fee, because the more compensation you offer, the more buyer's agents are going to try to sell your home as well. Think about it. If one listing on a street offers 1% to a buyer's agent, and then another down the street offers 3% to a buyer's agent, which one will be shown first? If the buyer has to pay their agent's commission, they're going to want to go with the 3% listing so that they don't have to come out of pocket that extra 2%. So how does it help a seller if it means potentially less buyers are able to purchase their home in the event they can't afford to pay their own realtor's fees, less traffic overall, and higher holding costs since it will take longer to sell potentially? How does it help your average home buyer who's already coming out of pocket with so much money and now needs to come out of pocket with an additional 2 to 3%? In my opinion, this is coming from a darker place and really comes from corporate greed. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, but hear me out. The litigation is a push to make buyers pay for their own agency representation out of their own pockets, which is very tough to do for most of your average home buyers. VA buyers are not even allowed to pay brokers' fees. But let's say a buyer's looking to purchase a $200,000 home, which is far below our local average sale price right now. Let's assume they're going to go with a conventional loan, 5% down. That buyer's coming out of pocket with approximately $14,000 to $16,000 for all their closing costs, including their down payment. And now the aim of this lawsuit is to make that buyer also now need to come out of pocket an additional $5,000 or $6,000 roughly to pay their realtor for their representation and services as well. This is going to add extra strain and difficulty for the average home buyer. However, this won't create much of a hurdle at all for institutional investors. This will ultimately create less competition for institutional investors who want to continue buying up as much real estate as they can. This doesn't adversely affect or disadvantage them like it does your average home buyer, but this can and will now make home ownership unattainable for some people. This makes me so mad. And I'm not referring to regular investors who may own one or a few rental properties. I'm referring to big companies and corporations that are purchasing huge portfolios of properties. Investors purchased 24% of all homes in 2021. Mega investors, which are investors that own more than 10,000 homes, their purchases jumped from 1% in 2021 to 3% in 2022. That's tripling it in 1 year. Institutional investors are forecasted to control 40% of the US single-family homes by 2030. Now back to the settlement again. NAR still defends itself and claims no wrongdoing in regards to violating antitrust laws or price fixing, but they did decide to settle this lawsuit for $418 million over the next 4 years. But here are the important takeaways. First, NAR has agreed to create a rule that prohibits offers of cooperative compensation to a buyer's broker from appearing in the MLS, taking effect in mid-July. However, there is no prohibition of offering cooperative compensation to a buyer's broker by a seller or a listing agent. It just can't be communicated in the MLS. Listing brokers can still share and offer compensation to a buyer's broker. It is not prohibited for sellers or listing brokers to offer compensation to a buyer's broker. It just cannot be offered or displayed on the MLS. Offers of compensation are still an option, pursued off MLS through negotiations, consultations, and other disclosures. Sellers may communicate in the notes or comments section of a listing their willingness to offer financial concessions that may go towards buyer's closing costs. Buyer's closing costs can include a buyer's broker's fee. This concession must be offered universally towards closing costs though, and not conditioned on whether or not the buyer has representation or going towards a buyer's broker's fee specifically. And now with this settlement, MLS participants, which is most real estate agents, will now be required to have a written buyer representation agreement with all buyers before touring homes. But this is important to know. Buyers brokers can still negotiate their pay via fixed fee commissions paid directly by their customers, concessions from sellers, or a portion of the listing broker's compensation, which is technically how it works now. So the solution I see best for moving forward is that sellers should still be open to offering a concession towards buyers' closing costs that can cover their agent's commission, since this is in their best interest to get the most activity and traffic on their listing. And buyers should be prepared to pay their realtor's commission in the event a seller isn't offering it, or if you can't afford to, be prepared to exclude listings that don't help you cover the fees. But the solution is not to go directly to the listing agent to save money unless you personally know them, because having your own representation is important. If you were getting sued, would you ask the prosecuting attorney to represent you just to save some money? No, that'd be crazy, because having someone look out for your best interests is crucial. The more you know.